Noticed something shift the moment my future mother-in-law handed me the salad tongs instead of a plate. Not a word. Not even a look. Just the assumption, quiet and complete, that I was the kind of woman who serves rather than sits. I almost laughed. I almost said something. Instead, I took the tongs and started passing the bowl around the table because that was easier than explaining and I wasn't sure yet what I wanted them to know. That moment came near the end of the evening, after the wine and the questions and the carefully arranged smallness of how they saw me. But before that, there was the drive up. There was Owen squeezing my hand on the highway and saying, "They're going to love you." There was me looking out the window at the flat Ontario farmland rolling past and thinking, that's not really what I'm here to find out. Owen and I had been together for 2.5 years when he suggested I meet his parents. We met at a continuing education lecture at the University of Toronto, the kind of event where people show up in good coats and pretend they go to these things all the time. He was there because his company had sent him. I was there because I genuinely wanted to be, which already put us on different planets. We started talking during the break, standing in line for bad coffee, and he asked what I did for a living with the easy confidence of someone who expected a normal answer. I work in public health, I said, which is true, it just leaves out quite a bit. My full title is Medical Officer of Health for a regional public health unit in Ontario. I oversee communicable disease control, health protection, and emergency response planning for a population of roughly 400,000 people. I have staff in multiple departments. I answer to a board of health and, in some situations, directly to the provincial government. I have been called in during flooding events, disease outbreaks, and once, a contaminated water situation that made national news. Owen knew I worked in public health. He knew I had a medical degree and a graduate degree in epidemiology. He knew I worked long hours and that my phone rang at inconvenient times. He did not know the scope of it because I had never laid it out in full. Not because I was hiding something. Because in the first year of dating someone, you don't sit across from them at dinner and say, "By the way, I run a public health agency." It sounds strange when you say it out loud. It sounds like you're competing. And I wasn't interested in competing. And I wasn't interested in him. His parents lived in a town about 90 minutes east of the city. The kind of town with a Canadian Tire on the main road and a hockey arena that doubles as the community center. His father had worked in the trades his whole life, retired early due to a back injury, and spent most of his time now with the local curling club. His mother had managed the office at an insurance brokerage for 23 years. They were the kind of people my own parents would have called salt of the earth, which was meant as a compliment. Owen had told them I was a doctor who worked in public health. That was the version they had. When we pulled into the driveway, his father was already at the door. Big man, flannel shirt, the handshake of someone who had spent decades doing physical work. He looked me over the way people do when they're trying to place you. His mother came from behind him, smaller, sharp eyes, warm enough smile. "So you're the doctor," she said. "Yes," I replied. She nodded once, already forming conclusions. Come in, it's cold." Inside, the house smelled like a roast in the oven and wood from the fireplace insert in the living room. Family photos covered one wall. Owen at various ages, a younger sister I hadn't met yet, school portraits, cottage photos. It looked like a life carefully documented. We sat in the living room first. His father asked about the drive, about traffic, about the weather coming in from the west. His mother brought out a cheese board. I noticed it had the kind of crackers you put out for company rather than the kind you eat on a Tuesday, which meant she had made an effort. I appreciated that. The questions started gently. Do you have family in the city? Where did you go to school? Do you rent or did you buy? The last one came with a particular kind of weight. We own a condo, I said, and left it at that. His father leaned back in his recliner. Public health, he said, like he was testing the words. So that's like the government side of medicine. Not actual patients. I've worked clinically, I said. But my current role is more administrative. He nodded in the way people do when they've already decided what something is. Paper-pushing medicine. He didn't say it with cruelty. He said it the way he probably said it about a lot of things. Just the facts, the way he saw them. His mother asked if Owen and I had talked about children. Owen cleared his throat. Mum, I'm just asking. We've talked, I said, keeping my voice easy. We're not in a rush. She smiled, but her eyes moved to Owen with a particular expression. The one that says, you should probably think about that sooner rather than later. Dinner was on the table by 6. His father carved the roast. His mother served the vegetables. When everyone had a plate, his mother looked at me and said, "Oh, would you mind getting the gravy from the stove?" We forgot it, I went and got it. Owen's younger sister arrived late, coming in through the back with her partner and stomping snow off her boots. She was younger by 4 years, loud in the comfortable way of someone who has always been the family favorite, and she sat down next to me with the energy of someone who had pre-formed opinions about this meeting. "Owen says you're some kind of health official," she said, reaching across me for the bread. "Something like that," I replied. "Sounds boring," she said, which I think she meant as a joke. "It has its moments," I said. Her partner asked what Owen did, and that took over the conversation for a while. Owen is a project manager at a construction firm. He manages contracts, coordinates timelines, deals with suppliers. It's good work, honest work, the kind his family understood and respected. His father lit up talking about a job Owen had managed last summer, a municipal contract, something with road infrastructure. I ate and listened. Halfway through dinner, his father turned back to me. "So what does a person in your position actually do day to day?" he asked. "Like, what does Tuesday look like?" "Mostly meetings," I said. "Reviewing data, making decisions about resource allocation, coordinating with provincial contacts." "So you're management," he said. "Yes." "Huh." He cut another piece of roast. Didn't realize they had that many managers in public health. Thought it was mostly nurses in that. "I'm the medical officer of health," I said. "I oversee the unit." He frowned slightly. "That's like a director?" "More like a chief medical officer," I said, "for the region." He paused, but only for a second. "Right. Good job for a woman," he added. "Stable. Good pension, I bet." I looked at him steadily. "Yes, the pension is solid." Owen looked at me. I gave him nothing back. His mother asked if I found it stressful, the job. I said it could be. She nodded and told me about her years at the insurance office, how stressful that had been, and I listened and said that sounded genuinely hard. Because it probably was. Stress doesn't rank itself by title. It was near the end of the meal when his father asked again, more specifically this time. I could tell the question had been sitting with him. "You said, medical officer of health. What does that actually mean, though? Is that like a department head?" "It's a statutory role under the Health Protection and Promotion Act," I said. "I have legal authority to issue orders to protect public health in the region. During the last major outbreak response we dealt with, I was coordinating directly with the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario." He stopped. His fork sat still against his plate. His mother looked at me. Owen's sister put down her wine glass. "So," his father said, "you're the actual. You mean you run the whole thing?" "Yes." "For how many people?" I told him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said slowly, "Well, I had no idea." "No," I said slowly. "Well, I had no idea." "No," I said, "you didn't." The temperature in the room changed. Not with anger, not with conflict, with something more uncomfortable. The slow recalibration of people who have spent 2 hours forming a picture of someone and now have to take it apart. His mother got up and brought out the cloth napkins she had not used at the start of the meal. His father sat straighter. His tone shifted, not into warmth exactly, but into a different kind of caution. The kind you use when you realize you've been careless. Owen reached over and put his hand on my arm. He didn't say anything, but I felt the gesture, the checking in, the wanting to know if I was all right. I was. I was also paying very close attention. After dessert, a Nanaimo bar, which his mother had made from scratch, we moved back to the living room. His father brought up my work again, this time with interest, with actual questions. What did emergency response planning look like? Had I been involved in the water crisis I had mentioned? How did coordination with other regions work? I answered honestly. I'm good at explaining things I care about. But I noticed something. The questions were good questions. They were the questions someone asks when they want to understand something, and yet underneath them was the thing I had seen all evening, the assumption that understanding me required knowing my position first, that the person and the title were inseparable. I had spent the whole evening being tolerated as one thing. Now I was being respected as another. And neither version had asked me what I thought about anything that wasn't work. Owen's sister pulled me aside in the kitchen while we were helping clear dishes. "He really likes you?" she said, quieter now than she'd been at dinner. "Like actually likes you." "I know," I said. She hesitated. "I think I was kind of rude earlier." "You were fine," I said. She looked at me. "Was I?" "No," I said honestly. "But it's okay." She nodded slowly. "That's a very diplomatic answer." I smiled. Occupational hazard. On the drive home, Owen waited until we were back on the highway before he said anything. "I didn't know you hadn't told them the full scope of your job." "I did not tell them," I said. "They didn't ask." He was quiet. "There's a difference," he said finally. "Yes," I agreed. "There is." He looked at the road. "Did you go in there expecting that?" "I went in there curious," I said. "Not expecting. There's a difference there, too." He nodded slowly. "Fair." The town lights faded behind us. I watched them go and felt something that wasn't quite satisfaction and wasn't quite sadness. More like the quiet that comes after you've learned something you needed to know. The next few days were calm in the surface level way of things that are not yet resolved. Owen went to work. I went to work. We ate dinner together and talked about ordinary things. But I could see him turning something over in his mind. He had a way of going slightly somewhere else mid-conversation that I had come to recognize. On Thursday evening, he brought it up. "My dad texted me," he said. "He wants to know if they can have us back for lunch before the holidays." "Why?" Owen set down his fork. "I think he wants to make it right." "Make what right?" He looked at me. "You know what I mean." I did. I also knew what that kind of effort usually meant. The effort to repair an impression, rather than the effort to question what had formed it in the first place. We went anyway. I'm curious by nature. It's both a professional advantage and a personal one. The lunch was at a restaurant in town, a family place with laminated menus and servers who called everyone Han. His father was already seated when we arrived, and he stood up when we came in, pulling out my chair before I could get to it. We ordered. He asked about my week, about a story he had seen on the news about a flu advisory, about whether that fell under my jurisdiction. "It does," I said. He nodded, leaning forward. "So when something like that happens, you're the one making the call." "In our region, yes." He sat with that. I could see him doing the math in his head. The recalibrating, the slow reordering of where I fit in his mental structure of the world. "I appreciate you coming," he said finally. "I wanted to say, I think I had the wrong idea about you." I looked at him. "What idea was that?" He thought for a moment. "That you were?" He paused. "Support staff?" He said it carefully, like he knew how it sounded. I nodded. "I understand." He frowned slightly. "You're not surprised?" "No. Why not?" "Because it's a reasonable assumption to make," I said, "when someone tells you they work in public health and doesn't tell you the rest." He looked at me steadily. "But you weren't going to tell us the rest." "No," I said. "Not right away." He exhaled. "Can I ask why?" "Because I wanted to know how you treated someone you thought was ordinary," I said, "before you knew anything else." The table was quiet. Owen looked at his water glass. His father nodded once, slowly. "And what did you find out?" I didn't answer immediately. I picked up my coffee cup and set it down again. "I found out that you treat people well enough," I said finally, "but that your interest depends on what they've achieved. And that's not the same as treating people well." He didn't flinch. He didn't argue either. He just sat there with it, which I respected. "You're right," he said. "I think that's true of me." "Awareness is the beginning," I said, "not the end." He nodded. "Fair." The drive home after that lunch was quieter than the first. Owen drove without the radio. I watched the fields and the old barns and the frozen ditches along the highway. He said, eventually, do you think they'll change? I think your father might, I said. I'm not sure about your mother. Why not her? She didn't think she did anything wrong, I said. Your father does. That's a different starting point. Owen was quiet for a long time. Then, what about me? I turned to look at him. What about you? He kept his eyes on the road. I stayed quiet at dinner. Both times. Yes, I said. I didn't know what to say. You could have said something small, I replied. You didn't have to make a speech. You could have just turned to your dad and said, she's actually fairly senior in her field. That's it. That was all it needed. He swallowed. You're right, I know. He was quiet again. I'm sorry. I know that too, I said. We didn't break anything that night. We also didn't pretend nothing had happened. We sat in the apartment after dinner with tea, and Owen said things he hadn't said before. That he had grown up watching his father define people by what they built with their hands, what they earned, what they managed to produce in the world. That some of that had settled into him without him noticing. That seeing his family look at me the way they had, and then recalibrate when they found out the rest, had made something click that he hadn't been able to put words to before. I grew up measuring myself too, he said. I still do. I just do it differently. What do you measure against? He looked at me. Against people like you, who seem to already know exactly who they are. I shook my head. I don't know exactly who I am. I just don't let other people's confusion about me become my confusion about myself. He sat with that for a moment. How do you do that? Practice, I said, and a decent amount of stubborn. He smiled. Finally, the real one, not the dinner table one. The following month, Owen's family hosted a holiday gathering. Extended family, neighbors, his aunt and uncle from out west. Owen had told them more before this time. He had simply told them who I was, what my work involved, without making it an announcement. I arrived in a good sweater and brought wine from a Niagara vineyard. His father introduced me to his brother as Owen's partner, who runs the regional public health unit. Simple, clean, not a performance. His uncle's wife worked in nursing. She asked me real questions, the kind of questions that come from someone who has worked in healthcare and knows the structure of it. We talked for 20 minutes by the kitchen island, and it was the best conversation I had at that house. Later, Owen's father found me near the back door, where people had stepped out to get some air. Thank you for coming, he said. He meant it differently this time, not as a formality. Of course, I said. He looked out at the backyard. Snow on the deck furniture, the sky the color it gets in December in Ontario, a deep charcoal gray that somehow still feels familiar. I've been thinking about what you said at lunch, he said. About the difference between treating people well and being interested in what they've done. I nodded. I don't think I've always known the difference, he said. Most people don't, I replied. He nodded slowly. I'm going to try. I believed him. Not because he had said the right thing, but because he said it without expecting me to praise him for it. There was no performance in it, just a man who had looked at himself and didn't entirely like what he saw. Months later, Owen and I sat in our kitchen on a Sunday morning. Coffee, newspapers on the table in the way we had fallen into, comfortable and unremarkable. He was reading something on his phone, and I was going through a report I needed to have annotated by Monday. He looked up at some point and said, "Do you think you'll ever stop testing people?" I glanced at him. What do you mean? He put his phone down. You went into that dinner knowing what you were doing. You knew how they'd react. You went in ready to measure them. I thought about that. Yes, I said. Does everyone get that test? Not everyone, I said. Just the ones who matter. He was quiet. Do I still get it? I looked at him across the kitchen table, the Sunday light coming through the window, the report open in front of me, the coffee going cool in my cup. You passed it a long time ago, I said. That's why you're still here. He nodded slowly. What did I do? You asked me what I thought about things that had nothing to do with my job, I said. On our third date. You asked me what I actually believed about something, not what I studied, not what my data said, just what I personally thought. And you listened to the answer. He looked surprised. I don't even remember what the conversation was. I do, I said. He smiled. Was I right? About whatever it was? No, I said. Completely wrong. But you were genuinely interested in being corrected. That's rarer than being right. He laughed. Good to know my ignorance was charming. It was, I said. The report sat between us, and we let the morning be quiet for a while. Here is the thing I have come to understand, and I say it not as a lesson because I'm not in the business of giving those, but because it is simply what I know. How someone behaves when they think you have nothing to offer them is not a flaw you can overlook. It is information. It is the clearest picture you will ever get of who they actually are, underneath the politeness and the effort and the good intentions. I am not a person who needs to be recognized. I have never needed that from strangers. But the people who choose to be in my life, those people need to see me. Not my title, not my credentials, not the version of me that makes them feel something about themselves. Just me. That dinner, and the ones that came after, taught me something I had known intellectually but had never tested so directly. People reveal themselves in indifference. Not in admiration, not in hostility, but in the quiet, unguarded moments when they believe there is nothing at stake. And what you do with that information, who you choose to keep close, who you decide deserves the rest of the story, that is yours entirely. No title required.